Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr., our president and founder, we'd like to welcome you to the Rainbow Push Coalition's annual Media and Telecommunications Symposium. Rainbow Push has been on the forefront of fighting for fairness and equity in Congress and the FCC and the White House and their companies for traditional and non-traditional media ownership, whether it be in television, radio, and newspapers, media images, and broadband access and opportunities for years now. And we'd like to begin a discussion on today entitled, Can Building Back Better Empower Black Communities? We are honored to have such a distinguished panel of guests, and they will be introduced to you by our moderator today, Dr. Fallon Wilson, who is the Vice President of Tech Policy of the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council, which we know in this space as the MMTC. We've been partnering with them since its inception, and we are honored to have Dr. Fallon Wilson today, who will lead us further into this particular panel. Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning and hello to all. Once again, my name is Fallon Wilson, and I have the extreme privilege of being able to host a great conversation with amazing digital equity champions and companies who are really helping us to think through this notion. How do we build back better to empower Black communities? And so our discussion will fall within the space of, with broadband being considered one of the nation's critical assets, what does that mean for closing the digital divide and involving more Black Americans in the digital ecosystem? How will digital ecosystems that support connectivity for all and new jobs build and maintain these new networks? In this panel, these amazing experts, but I also like to think of them as community builders, right? Because they're both in. We want to know how President Biden's plan can accelerate the closing of the digital divide while also providing new economic opportunities for communities of color. And so I get to welcome these amazing people. We have as one of our first amazing panelists, Michelle Culver, who's the Executive Director for Public Policy and Strategic Alliances at Verizon. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Fallon.
We have Clint Odom, who is the Vice President at T-Mobile. How are you doing, Clint?
Doing great. Happy to be here this morning.
And we have Claire Mesadora, who is the head of the National Policy Network of Women of Color in Blockchain. And this is going to be a great discussion. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you.
Okay, so good people. And also we may have an amazing additional panelist who will join us. So do not be dismayed when you see additional people popping up. Okay, so let's get into the thick of the discussion. And I'm going to direct this to Michelle, actually. The pandemic really defined and elevated the importance of closing the digital divide. It also demonstrated that this is an all hands on deck type of problem. How did the private sector respond to the needs of people who were not connected to the internet? How did companies come on and help us really navigate this space?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Wilson. And I think that and thanks again for having me today. I'm very honored and happy to be a part of this discussion. And thank you, Rainbow Push. We very much value the partnership at Verizon, so I'm very happy to be here. I think one part of your question, you said elevated the importance of closing the digital divide. And I think that really shines a light on the fact that this is not a new problem. This is something that we have recognized for a very long time, and Verizon, and I'm sure my counterparts at the other companies, have been working on this issue for quite some time. I think the part of your question, though, that is really of critical importance is that now it is an all hands on deck problem. And we saw an unprecedented government response to closing the digital divide because of the pandemic. We were all sheltered in place. We were all at home. And those of us who had the internet, we had advantages and the ability to stay connected. And those who had not, it was very, very obvious and clear. And these people were suddenly in the dark, so to speak. And they couldn't do any of the essential things that needed to be done. in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of just staying connected to family and friends. Suddenly you couldn't see people's faces. You couldn't see them in person. So you needed to be able to work and play and connect via Zoom, which was not a thing before. And so at Verizon, we stepped up immediately with efforts in terms of keeping our children able to be connected with school. We have always had low cost offerings, and so we sort of amplified the fact that there were lower cost plans that people could use.
And could you give
take
an
advantage
example of what a low cost plan is? I mean, because I know we're not talking to, in the DC Beltway, we're talking to like everyday Black people. What does a low cost option mean?
$20. So for $20, your family can be connected. And for what happened also during the pandemic was this emergency broadband benefit program. So we've always had the Lifeline program, which was a low cost program for people, but it didn't apply to other types of connections. It was really for your home telephone service. This emergency broadband benefit came into place, and I hope that people who are listening who qualify, if you haven't signed up yet, it is still available. There is still money in the pot. Go sign up, because you get $50 a month and you get money that can go towards a device. And so Verizon was participating in that program. And like I said, we have a $20 plan. And so for $50, you could even get an enhanced plan. You can go buy, you have a one-time benefit for a device. So there were many things that we did. We also did things in the education space. And made sure that people understood that there were offerings available to them and that they can continue to get online and shift in the way that everyone needed to shift last year.
And so you're saying that companies really did come through, the private sector really did come through at a moment where everyone was trying to figure out what to do. It was very encouraging to see all of the internet service providers to try to figure out how they could either extend, to your point, the low cost options that were available on their various plans, or figure out how to do various types of wireless and mesh networks, which brings me to my next question, which I'll actually direct to Clint. Wireless connectivity became a critical resource for citizens in need of immediate access when it came to the pandemic, right? Telehealth visits became a norm because we couldn't go into like physical location because of the virus. Government services had to figure out how to deliver. Commerce and all these things had to be operating simultaneously while people were at home, or in some cases, in some of the worst cases that we saw during the pandemic, children sitting in the Taco Bell parking lot has been the clarion call for what does it mean to get access to like Wi-Fi networks in public spaces. So how did mobile access help maintain relevant connections for citizens during the pandemic? I'll kick it to Clint, and also Michelle, I know you may want to jump in on the back end on that too. Sure. So Clint, please.
Well, thank you, Fallon. It's great to be with you and all our friends here. Also want to thank Rainbow Push for this kind invitation. My history with Rainbow Push goes back to the late 90s when Reverend Jackson and his followers were showing up at the FCC while mergers were being considered to make sure that employment levels weren't negatively affected by mergers, and making sure that there were affordable products that folks like us would not be left behind as these companies merged and got bigger and started offering new products and services. So thank you for your long service. The pandemic exposed lots of holes that we've talked about that have existed for a long time. Some of these holes are, even in urban areas, we have places where we don't have broadband that's sufficient enough for two-way video. We have problems with affordability of the product. So even if you've got access to a broadband pipe somewhere near your home, it's got to be affordable. Right. And then third, we've got to be able to know how to use this technology and understand why it's relevant. With respect to the first issue, T-Mobile has been working around the clock to make sure that our ultra-fast 5G wireless broadband product is available to as many Americans as possible. We just passed last week the 200 million mark for people who can get a 5G signal today. So we're making sure that in urban areas and in rural areas, people have access to broadband speeds that are very similar to what you might get with your cable product or your wireline product. Secondly, with respect to affordability, we participated obviously in the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program that Congress passed into law. We've been very pleased with the outcome of that program. T-Mobile has provided a significant portion of broadband services to to the millions of people who participate in that program. Our communities tend to be mobile first communities. The cell phone is a part of just about every African-American household, if you look at measures by Pew and the FCC. So we made sure that this service is available and that it is affordable. And we're hoping that as the Congress directs the FCC to transition to a new affordability program, that people will still be able to get that service at a price and a product offering that is familiar to them, and that we do this in a way that makes sure that people stay online. And then last, we help people. People have now come to understand that affordable broadband and broadband close to your home doesn't mean nothing if you don't know how to use the product.
Right.
So telehealth was a wonderful way of helping people to connect for the first time with a doctor. If you've got a broadband connection, you can talk with a doctor and get medical services just like we are talking right now. Unfortunately, for all the work that we did, and T-Mobile, in addition to participating in the EBB program, we launched a program called Project 10 Million, where we're giving free internet hotspots to families who participate in the free or reduced lunch program. We've given out 3 million of these hotspots since the pandemic began. But the bigger point there is if you had access to broadband, and if you couldn't afford broadband and you didn't have a Wi-Fi alternative, in places like Kansas City, Missouri,
Right.
45% of the students in the public school system did not return to school when the pandemic struck and when school was released. So we've talked about, Wi-Fi and we know we've got landline broadband products and wireless products, but the sad truth is that unless we teach people what they can do with these broadband connections, people are literally dropping out and losing years of economic productivity and years of education as well. So that's got to be a big component of Build Back Better. And I've been pleased to see that some amount of money of that $65 billion has been reserved for broadband equity and for teaching people how to use the technology.
Right. Michelle, would you like to add something about the wireless work that Verizon did?
Yes, I think that is critical to some of the work that we've done. I know that in the education space, for example, we launched a Verizon distance learning program that gave, where you were talking about the people who were in the Taco Bell parking lot. That was a story that everyone saw, and we were all, really affected by that. And we really leaned in to provide those broadband connections through hotspots, through smartphones and laptops. And we made that available to more than 38 million students in 40 states and DC. So that we expect that had an impact to keep students connected and keep them online. I think Clint's point about the digital learning and the digital equity, you have something in your hands, but you don't know what to do with it, is really something that's of critical importance. And we talk about, in the industry, we call that adoption.
Right.
Where people adopt the service that is available to them and they can afford. I think we all live in our bubble. Fallon, you've referred to our Beltway bubble, and we think, oh, well, of course everyone knows that they should be online. I'm online all day long. I'm online right now. But it's not that obvious for everyone. Right. Or if they may be intimidated by it, they may not even know where to begin. And so we also entered a partnership with the National 4-H Council, and our goal is to provide 15,000 adults with digital skills training in rural America, and so that they have the tools that they need for jobs, for workforce development, to understand, online banking, just the things that we take advantage of and just take for granted. It's so important to get people connected in that way. And so we understand how important the partnerships are. Partnerships with MMTC, partnerships with Rainbow Push, to get the word out so that people understand that there's so much power with being online and that they need to understand how they can unlock that power.
Right. I love that both of you and also both of your companies understand the importance of adoption. I think that has always been the missing link in the conversation. I'm glad that the SEC and Congress understands that now, as we move into the emergency broadband benefit being the affordable connectivity fund and all of that amazingness, where we can actually talk about how to do recruitment and adoption. What I love about it is I think it's important to talk about like how to actualize it or operationalize it either through telehealth or digital banking. And I think those are essential, like foundation things so that African-American communities can leap ahead. But I'm also excited about how we can push the type of digital literacy and learning to new emerging technology spaces, right? I would venture to say, and I've said this in the work that I've done locally in Davidson County in Nashville, when I've sat on all these STEM committees, and I was like, oh, the kids need to learn computers, and so we're going to teach them Excel. And I was like, I have a PhD and an MA, and I mean, I'm good at Excel. Let me not try to not say that, because I could do some things there, but it wasn't the thing that drove me to understand data or research around or wanting to do this work around technology. It was a notion of innovation. And so I think it's important to talk about digital literacy skills, but I think we should also push many of our communities to think about what are the emerging technology spaces like blockchain and about crypto and about 4D and about like virtual. I think people rise when they're able to see greatness and not just remedial types of things. When we tend to think about digital literacy and trainings. And so, Cleve, I'm going to bring you in here because I know you can talk at length about this. Having access to broadband is great, but it's also connected to the emerging technologies and the emerging things we can do and bending of technology and data and research. So tell me this, how did the pandemic expose these new opportunities for people of color in these new emerging markets of technology, especially for Black women? Because I know I love the brothers and also the non-brothers and the trans brothers, because we're all inclusive here, but how did the sisters and the women of color really use the pandemic in these emerging technological spaces to push the needle for our community?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. And I want to thank, Rainbow Push and Reverend Jackson for being with visionaries, for having this conversation, but also for looking to the future. I'm a Howard University grad, and I was so proud to see, Reverend Jackson support students and made a difference. And as a crypto innovator, I first learned about blockchain and cryptocurrency when I was in the Obama administration. I got immersed into the space in 2017 and have not looked back. And interestingly, the first panel on blockchain by any of the Black civil rights groups, or even the CBC or the like, was Rainbow Push in January 2018 during the Rainbow Push Wall Street conference. Reverend Jackson's team had me convene a panel to talk about economic opportunity and financial inclusion and empowerment for Black and brown communities. So while a lot of people are waking up to blockchain cryptocurrency now, I commend Rainbow Push for even 3 years ago, seeing the need and seeing the importance of having these conversations in our community. And I'll pick up on a few words that were just mentioned: digital equity and digital literacy, right? Because we can make sure that we actually make close the digital divide and make technology available to people, but how are we going to prepare them to actually use it? And one of the good things about the infrastructure bill is the fact that there's a lot of funding for training people for the jobs of the future, those skills training, and also financial literacy, and of course, closing the digital divide. None of the innovations, advancements we have to actually function and thrive in the innovation economy will be worth it if accessibility continues to plague our communities. So I will say that, we have seen, I do want to highlight a few examples. Last year, the state legislature of Georgia, directed all high schools to teach financial literacy. It identified 7 areas of practice, and one of them was blockchain and cryptocurrency. We had Ohio just mandate that to graduate high school in Ohio, you have to pass financial literacy. And the incoming mayor of New York City, says that one of the priorities he'll have is teaching, cryptocurrency in schools. We know that, a lot of the emerging technologies, not just blockchain technology, it's artificial intelligence, it's virtual reality, it's augmented reality, it's robotics. Right? All of these are accessible to people of color. Actually, none of them require a degree. Most of them, if you get a certificate program in cybersecurity, a 2-year program, a 6-month program, you get the certificate, you can get a job in cybersecurity right now. Same thing in blockchain. Blockchain is barely 10 years old. No one has a degree in it. So, but we have a challenge getting these opportunities, getting the word out to our communities, because these emerging technologies are not accessible to us. While these jobs, we are ripe for them because they don't require for you to be technical. I will say, during COVID, and as was mentioned before, there were a lot of opportunities to do things different. One thing I would say, that was a good and a bad was the PPP loan program, right? So, we recognize a need to support independent contractors, right? These informal small businesses, entrepreneurs and startups that could not get a bank at Wells Fargo or Bank of America. Right. So the PPP loan program was actually supposed to support that. But the SBA recognized that to date, most of the fintech companies had not gotten an SBA registration to actually, disperse these loans. So you had, Cash App and PayPal and other fintechs get these licenses and be in a position to service entrepreneurs and independent contractors that don't have a bank account, right? Where you can actually, engage with fintechs, which was a great innovation because we're moving towards this whole digital equity. Unfortunately, the Black and brown businesses didn't actually get the money as they were supposed to. But I recognize the innovation of making sure fintechs had access. So we have to go build on that, because what's happened with blockchain and cryptocurrency, we have disrupted the financial system. Like, we have created a new pathway, but we haven't done a really good job in terms of financial literacy, educating communities of color about these new opportunities. So, at least for me, I've been in this space for quite a while now, and I focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and education, because it's important to make sure that we're informing our communities to make sure that these tools that we're talking about are their pathway to thriving in the innovation economy. And as I close in my remarks, I do want to highlight Web3, which I think represents a big opportunity for communities of color. Web3 is this conversation about how do we fix some of the problems in the internet right now? How do we create a decentralized web that can actually facilitate the needs of the world? Globally, the internet continues to be popular. But we know with the data breaches, the misinformation, the scams, and also the internet was supposed to decentralize us, right? But today it's owned by 4 white males. That is a failing of the internet. And so Web3 is this concept of the next iteration of the web. How can we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to provide a better experience, a customized experience, a protected experience where your data is protected? And how do we layer on blockchain technology so we can use smart contracts to enable microtransactions, but also have more secure peer-to-peer engagements? Right? So this conversation is happening about this next iteration of the web and everything that we can make, how we can make it better, but accessibility continues to be a problem, right? We can build a better web, but if the digital divide continues to permeate, the Black and brown communities will still not be able to participate in Web3. And that's something we have to address.
Okay, so I'm going to stay here for a quick second because you said so many great things. I want to make sure that our listening public got it. Part of my, I guess I have several questions for you based on what you just shared. I guess my first question is it the reason why Black people are not leading or being at the vanguard within emerging technologies, which include blockchain, cryptocurrency, virtual reality, 4D, 7D, all the types of things that are coming out in the creative economy primarily, you would say it's because they don't have access to the internet? Or in addition to, could it also be that we don't necessarily have the certification processes locked in place to begin educating educators so they can train people to expose them to it? I mean, like I said before we got on the public live stream, is that every African-American person I know, it says that they have blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And I was like, what does it mean though? And it's like, I don't know, but I'm in it, right? So there's like a fandom and an excitement around it that I think can also be like a framework for like interest-driven learning to learn more about it. Because I think people have a very fandom understanding of it. So is it also the digital divide, but could it also be that we have not demystified the fandom around it to really talk about what it can and cannot do? That's my first thought and first question, follow-up question to you. And then my additional question is, you said so many great things here as it relates to like the future of work and what that means for Black people. And I know that is essential for how we, we need to begin thinking about that. But yet again, I think it's the adoption piece that comes right back and hits us in the face. And so can you talk a little bit about the I don't know if we have really deconstructed blockchain. We expect people, this is the new thing, and people have a fandom notion around it, but really don't understand how does it live? What does it mean? Because data is important, right? You talk about like feeding data to machines and having a new type of web experience that is decentralized, but most of our data sets that talk about Black people are also deficit oriented. We have not built our own data sets. And most of the data that probably could be useful, I'm gonna throw this to the companies, are proprietary. And so it's very hard to have like great conversations. But tell me, how do we really begin operationalizing and deconstructing the fandom around these new emerging technologies so that it's accessible? Because y'all are talking in languages that my 15-year-old sister or my 78-year-old grandmother were like, this is not relevant for me, which is adoption again, but please.
No, excellent points you raise. And the first one I would say is accessibility is important. That is paramount, right? So what people do with accessibility, we can't judge, right? So first, yes, closing the digital divide is important, and it's where we should be focused. But there are other barriers, right? And another barrier is that, unfortunately, Black and brown people, we are late adapters. We are innovative, we're visionary, but we are risk averse. And emerging technologies, new financial instruments, to us are risky, right? We tend to want to wait till let's let them work out the kinks until we get in. And as a result, we end up being consumers and not producers.
Right.
So one of the things we've seen is the advent of Robinhood. Why Robinhood has been so successful is because it created a pathway for new investors. For the average day person who wants to buy stocks, don't have to, oh my God, do I have to get a stockbroker? Oh my God, do I need a Ameritrade account? So Robinhood, PayPal, Cash App have created these pathways where anyone who already has these apps, and everybody already has these apps, can actually become new investors. We're seeing more women, more young people,
right.
But Black and brown people we're still at the point where we're saying, oh, let me wait. And each time we wait, even though the marketplace is browner, even though
right.
we are actually the most dominant part that private sector wants to court and get, we're still late adapters. So that as a result, we will continue to be consumers and not producers. So yes, we need to ensure there's accessibility, but we also need to make sure that we're taking more pragmatic risks, that we're having these conversations. Again, that's why I said it was great that, Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push in 2018 decided that this conversation was important to have, right? We need to have these conversations in our churches, with our sororities,
yes.
Because we have to normalize it, right? You're absolutely right.
That's exactly where I was driving you. We have to normalize it. It has to be accessible.
Yes.
It has to be able to be digested. And
Yes.
and because technology is so iterative and it is so rapidly changing, I think both companies, both government and community have to work as partners in this space, which also gets me to think about like the regionality of the work that we do, right? I think we've had some great conversations presently about the gap and the digital divide, but we also want to talk about the rural piece. You know, the Joint Center, one of our great colleagues and amazing organizations is, you know, they put out a great study that said about, let me back up. We do know that the majority of Black people live in southern states. I think let's establish that here. And then of the Black rural South, well, the counties that we consider to be the Black rural South, 38% lack internet access. And that is a problem for me. I always tell people, if I was a billionaire or a millionaire, someone or a company said, Fallon, what would you do to change the world for the digital divide? I would say I would go to a southern state, like Mississippi in particular, because if I can make Mississippi right for like digital access, equity, and connectivity, then the entire world opens up for other Black residents across the South. And so my question, I'm going to direct this to Clint, given some of the work that I know T-Mobile is doing. Why is it the case, and how can Build Back Better directives accelerate rural access in terms of supply and demand? We once again, the Joint Center just did an amazing study that shows that there is a need. And also I say yet again that the majority of Black people live in the South. And so I think it is a good place to have a discussion about affordability, connectivity, and availability of resources. Clint?
Thank you for the opportunity. You know, this is very close to my heart as someone who was born and was raised and grew up in Louisiana, in one of the rural parishes of Louisiana. And as you indicated, I think the new census data says something like 16.6% of Black Americans live in the South, which means we have a higher proportionality in the South than anywhere else in the country. So this $65 billion that we talked about at the beginning of our talk is what Congress has appropriated to support investments throughout the United States to increase our broadband access. So it's going to be really important that governors, in particular in these states, have a good sense of where we have broadband and where we do not have broadband, and make sure that those investments through competitive grant programs administered by the Commerce Department are going to be hitting the places where we don't have broadband at high speeds today. That requires good mapping, knowing where we have broadband and where we do not. And it also requires companies who have scale and have experience in building networks actually go out and participate in building this infrastructure. T-Mobile is a little different in that we aren't going to be participating as robustly as some of the wireline providers are in this program. We've got, you know, an unrelated commitment to serve 5G in throughout the United States, including in rural areas. And right now we are the leaders in the United States in building 5G wireless to urban and rural areas. So we are coming to your town if we are not there already. In addition to deploying 5G, we're also investing in communities through our hometown grant program, where over 5 years, we're investing $25 million to towns of 50,000 and below in population to fund economic development and technology needs of that community. And a lot of the communities that we've already given grants to are majority Black towns, majority brown towns. And so this is how we're pushing capital out into these communities in ways that are not funded by the government, but are very much consistent with our strong desire to serve the rural markets. You know, I just saw a tweet from the president of our consumer group not long ago, heralding the fact that we just opened a T-Mobile store in Opelousas, Louisiana. This is a town of about 15,000 people, majority Black town in Louisiana, and and wherever we have a store, we've got coverage. So we are really leaning in to rural build out in a way that makes me very proud, and that really shows that 40% of the population in the United States lives in rural areas. So the carriers aren't there. We're missing huge business opportunities. But to your point, and you are correct that our friends at the Joint Center highlighted the fact that there's a digital divide, but for Black folks in the rural areas, we got a digital chasm. And we've got to close that chasm through intentional policies led by governors and participated and having companies like ours participating in the build out. Fiber to the home is the home run that everybody wants. But again, remember, seniors, people of color, African Americans in particular, are wireless first families. So we've got to make sure that all of those options are available to people. Fiber to the home, fiber to the 5G antenna that's going to backhaul all that traffic. And so if we do this right, and I have every reason to believe that we will, we're going to really close that gap for the first time in a long time. We thought this could never happen, but we think it's going to happen this time around.
I think it's amazing how for those of us who have been doing digital equity advocacy work for the last 10 to 15 years, the notion of a divide has been so permanent. But in a matter of 1.5 months or a year and a half, both companies, government, and community leaders have all come together to figure out how to take out a huge bite out of it. It is amazing when we come together and what we put our minds to. And so when I think about how connectivity is so essential for life, not only in the sense of like emerging technologies and the work that Clev is doing, are the amazing things we talked about when it comes to telehealth or when it comes to education. One of the things that was probably the most disheartening for me during the pandemic, though there was a lot of disheartening, let's be very clear, but one of them was the notion that almost 500,000 Black businesses closed, right? They closed because many of them were mom and pop shops, right? That were, storefronts. They were not like the large, scaling types of companies that we're so used to talking about when we talk about like tech companies, right? They were really like in person. And so that's disheartening in a way, because they didn't know how to transition from online, offline, right? How do you now do a wireless like business and deliver soul food to your demographic, right? What does it mean to be a partner with Postmates? What type of high-speed bandwidth do you need to use a closed system to do checkout now online? All these things came and our businesses were not able to transition like they should. Even though there was an amazing study, y'all may be interested in this, GoDaddy along with the Arizona State University, it's an amazing study where they say, yes, these businesses did close, the data on that is very true, but there were a lot of micro online businesses that Black Americans and Latino Americans were able to like stir up during the process of all of the closings, right? Which is very encouraging. And I guess this is a question for each of you, actually, and I'm going to pitch it first to Michelle. Once again, the impact on local Black businesses has been profound. There are some lows, once again, the closings, and I'm still, the SBA and other people are still digging into the data to see what it now looks like. So I really can't give an understanding where that is. But then there were some highs because there were a lot of micro digital businesses that came online where people were either selling hair. Let me tell you, the hair business is real good, people. I mean, they were doing all types of things in order to navigate a system when they did not have access to the internet, right? But they used their mobile devices, I mean, you could say that fairly, to be able to do these types of e-commerce types of things. And so what lessons should we learn, both as private, government, and community leaders during this period about Black businesses, right? And how to support them moving forward. And so, Michelle, can you give us some understanding of how Verizon is thinking about this? And then I'll pitch it to Clef, and then I'll pitch it to Clint.
Yes, thanks, Fallon. So the small business issue is something that, you laid out the facts. It was something that was very dire and serious. And one thing that I've heard over this time is that every company suddenly became a tech company because you had to be online.
Right.
And so we've made a commitment to help 1 million small businesses and a $10 million commitment to underserved communities, and hoping to get those 1 million businesses back and get them the tools that they need to succeed in this digital tech-focused economy. So we did a few things. Of course, I can't go through all of them here, but one that I think is really, really critical is that some of these businesses just didn't even know what to do. They didn't know where to begin.
Right.
And so we launched an online portal called Verizon Small Business Digital Ready, where you can go and get all of these bite-sized for free. You just sign up. You get all of these bite-sized little nuggets of things that you may need now for your business that you didn't need before the pandemic. You need to understand how to work in e-commerce. You're not there with your cash register with the drawer popping out anymore. You need to understand how to do all of your business online, and that opens up other issues that you may not have a nice website. You need to get your website together. You need to learn how to market online. All sorts of little modules available for these businesses completely free, so that they can have resources that they need. We also launched a recovery fund. It's $10,000 grants to help businesses get back on their feet. In Chicago, we worked with a company called Black in Tech, and it's an accelerator group that helps Black-led tech companies in the Chicago area. We have a similar program in Houston with partnering with a company called Div Inc.
And those are all of my amazing colleagues. Yes, those are good people, but I'm sorry.
So we're working with Div Inc., we're working with Next Street, we're working with LISC, the Local Initiative Support Coalition. We're working with, we launched with TechRise in Chicago. We also had a comeback coach. And this was a woman who went around to businesses around the country. We have a video on our website of how she helped one business restaurant transition to a food truck so that they could keep their business going. They just had to reimagine what they were doing. So we've made a major commitment to small businesses. And I think that we as big business have to participate in the recovery, and Verizon is stepping in and stepping up in that way.
That's very helpful, Cleb. So doing the amazing work you do with women of color and blockchain, and many of them I am for certain have their own businesses in addition to working at companies. How can we better support them given what we have seen during the pandemic? You're on mute, Cleb.
Yes. Oh, yes, thank you. During the pandemic, we definitely saw a lot more adoption of blockchain and cryptocurrency, because just like everybody was home, and we saw people actually get more immersed in this space. And one of the tools that we saw people start to use is that any e-commerce business, any small business can actually create a merchant account to start accepting cryptocurrency that would actually give them access to this new marketplace, this new consumer base. And that was really game-changing. Also, we saw nonprofits, philanthropy organizations create merchant accounts to actually start accepting cryptocurrency. Many articles about how that was brought life to a lot of merchants and nonprofits. So just creating a merchant account, accessing this robust marketplace, this robust consumers who have crypto that want to patronize people who accept cryptocurrency, because that's part of the adoption. So for small businesses that are in the audience, definitely BitPay is one of the resources. It's called bitpay.com. You can create a merchant account easily, whether you're a nonprofit, for profit. Also, we saw during COVID, NFTs really boomed. Most people, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, but they're really just collectibles. And they're really,
go on. No, I was going to make sure you define NFTs and because it's an acronym. Just want to make sure we're all level setting.
Yes. Yeah. So non-fungible tokens, just think of them as collectibles. Just think of them as when we used to trade baseball cards. So they're a tool for creatives. And so we have seen over the last decade, cities look at creative industries and looking at them as ways to foster economic opportunity in cities. So when you look at creative industries across the nation, creators are not just in music and art and writings and such. Creators are really fueling today's economy in terms of data and have been really leveraging NFT. So creative industries have made more money in the last few years, 2 years, because of NFT than ever. We have, innovators creating creator tokens and NFTs. We have, young people in high school and colleges creating their own NFTs. What it allows you to do is you use your network. Your network becomes your marketplace. You create the NFT or digital, or your digital token, and you actually are able to sell to your network, right? And a lot of these barriers are diminished where you have to actually create a business account or get a business license. So
but it's an open market for people to get in. And I would venture to say that in addition to us being at home, and thanks to our amazing private industry and our infrastructure, a lot of us consumed a lot of amazing streaming online. And also we saw a lot of amazing, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram influencers come up in the game, because even I, who was, a little bit old, like I'm not watching these things, have fallen into the trap of watching so many like Black creatives do a lot of interesting things because we were at home and we were trying to, distract ourselves from a pandemic. And so this notion of online businesses, this notion of people moving into NFTs, this notion of people like having companies like T-Mobile and Verizon and others to do this work is really profound, because even in the most devastating of moments, Black people have been digitally resilient.
And if I can interject, it's really about how do you monetize your content? Especially Black and brown people, we're creative.
Right.
We actually share our content on the internet willingly, and then people distribute.
I mean, I don't, only because, to your point, we do not have business education. But I'm very happy to have seen during the pandemic that at least the number of Black youth who have created all types of content for TikTok and for Instagram have banded together, and they have actually formed their own union to ensure that that doesn't happen to their content, which is also important. So Clint, would you like to jump in on some of this work on how we can really take the lessons from what happened to Black businesses and the nuances that have, rose, right?
Sure,
and how we
sure.
can move forward with it.
No, thank you for that. So T-Mobile actually launched a few initiatives earlier this year that really sort of were designed to help blunt the negative impact of COVID. So we launched a program called Magenta Edge, and I'll put in the chat the link to this program, but it offers entrepreneurs expert advice and insight on how to navigate the really difficult times that the COVID economy produced. And so it provides free educational programming on subjects like best practices for entrepreneurship, how to obtain small business loans, and additional resources to navigate the COVID economy. We also implemented a Next Tech program to actually teach Black people who are historically underrepresented in the telecom business, to teach them the telecom infrastructure field. So we've contributed about $1 million in funding, about $750,000 from T-Mobile and another $150,000 from one of our telecommunications partners, to actually create a trade school that will oversee the recruitment, training, and certification and job placement of candidates who are looking for long-term careers and businesses in the infrastructure part of the business. So, this is not just how do we sell, food, or how do we sell clothing, or how do we sell leisure services, but how do we actually participate in the same business that T-Mobile is in? Because we don't build all of our own infrastructure. We work with partners in many ways to do that. So teaching people how to climb towers, how to deploy 5G small cells, and we've had probably almost 100 people who have completed that program and have been placed in jobs since the pandemic. The other thing we did, and we shouldn't forget that we have small businesses that are out there doing business with us today. T-Mobile does about $2.4 billion with small businesses each year that are minority women and women-owned businesses. So what we did is we started to accelerate our payment to these vendors to help the businesses survive. So instead of having a net pay of 60 days on invoices, we moved it to 30 days. And we are now in the process of moving it to 15 days. So that
no. Say that again. The net what?
So net what we call in the industry net pay.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But what was the day on that? Because you know, I advocate for tech entrepreneurs all the time. What did T-Mobile say they're gonna do?
So we already have moved from our policy of 60 days net pay to, for small businesses, 30 days net pay. We are in the process and hope to announce soon that we are condensing that period to 15 days. So that if you are a small business that's doing work with us, you do the work and invoice us for it, and you will be paid for that work in 15 days. Now,
how many Verizon, everybody listen to this. Listen, this is good stuff here.
If you aren't in, you know, the business of big business, or, you know, doing business with large businesses, this may not seem like much to you, right? If you're in a basic retail business, you know, you buy wholesale products, you refashion them, and you sell them, you get paid immediately.
Right.
But when you're doing business with large business, you generally have to wait, as sometimes months in order to be paid. But your workers have to be paid, bills have to be paid in that period. So T-Mobile, understanding that the stress caused by the pandemic, to help keep these businesses alive, we've decided that this is one of the many things that we can do to help address the economic crisis for small businesses. So we're very proud. We're very proud of this particular facet of our response, and we've actually really seen some nice uptick, despite all the carnage. Uptick in the business that we're doing with minority businesses, African American owned businesses in particular.
And I think that is probably going to be like, I've heard that other companies also are doing that, in trying to get money in hand a little quicker than, because the norm is 60 days, and that's a very hard thing for small businesses. But I know that all of the companies on here are thinking those things, because y'all want to support greatness, which is really important. But we only have one question left, and it's the most essential one. And I'm gonna need y'all to be super concise, because I don't need Stephen to be like, Fallon, we're going over. But we all know that the infrastructure bill is passed, and it's like, I mean, finally, right? It's like excitement, like we can get to moving. And so tell the public in accessible language, as if you were talking to your grandmother, what this infrastructure plan means for addressing the digital divide for Black people. And Michelle, I'm gonna kick it to you, then I'm gonna go to Cleb, and then I'm gonna give Clint, well, you won't have the last word because I'll have the last word, but
I'll have the penultimate word.
The penultimate word, but tell us do it in a way that gives Black joy. I mean, because we can talk about the languaging on this, but I think once again, it's not just the adoption, it's how we translate. So tell me about what these dollars can mean for Black people.
Well, I think what I told my mother is that this emergency broadband benefit will continue. And so it won't be $50 anymore, but it will be $30. So that relief that she has enjoyed since the program has been in place is something that she will continue to have. And also, so that's point one. And point two, I think, is with the Digital Equity Act, that's part of this, is huge. And she can expect to see programming from our wonderful partners like MMTC and Rainbow Push and NUL and NAN and others who are going to go out and apply for grants.
Right.
And they're going to start having programming. So she should look out for emails or flyers or commercials or something where our trusted friends are going to be out in our community, making sure that people understand that there are programs for them to afford, access, and adopt the internet.
Now, Michelle, you did that perfectly. I would feel okay for you coming to my church and saying that from the pulpit. That's what I want. Come on, Cleb. Don't go Beltway jargon. Give me the substance of the moment.
Okay, well, the blockchain cryptocurrency space, the tech space has lots of jobs opening and we can't fill them. And these are jobs that Black and Latinx people can fill. They don't require a degree. So the infrastructure bill has money for skills training, for workforce development, for training people for the jobs of the future. So as Michelle said, those programs are going to be coming out to train people to take these jobs because the jobs are abundant, but unfortunately we need to get the word out to our community.
Right.
And the bill has funding so that we can start training our community in quick trainings, short-term trainings to get them into the workforce.
Okay, you're invited to the reunion cookout. Okay. Come on, Clint, what you got? I mean, I know
Alan,
you speak, and I know you speak Black, Pastor.
I got one thing for our listeners to remember today. If you are living in a rural or suburban part of the United States and your home broadband internet choices are limited, maybe you've got one cable company, maybe you've got one telephone company, but the broadband service is very slow and it's very expensive, T-Mobile is coming to the rescue with a $50 a month home broadband product.
I'm about to say, you gonna tie this to infrastructure though?
I will.
Okay, I'm just trying to see.
With no contract and with broadband speeds that can be as high as 100 megabits per second and 20 minutes down and 20 megabits per second up. It is available to you for anyone who participates in a broadband affordability program like EBB or its successor programs.
Right.
Or if states are smart enough to fund broadband projects that include 5G, we could build 5G areas for broadband today where it does not exist and provide a product and a speed that does not exist in the market. This is a game changer for 5G and one of the applications that we can use for 5G that really differentiates it from everything that came before it. Just plug in a router and give mesh Wi-Fi, throughout your home, and you've got a product and you've got broadband in ways that you never had it before.
Okay, I'm gonna say this to you because we are such great colleagues. I don't know if I'm gonna invite you to Cookout, Clint, because you didn't do what I asked, and you said 5G, and I don't have time because we only got 3 minutes to break down what fifth generation technology means in a way that my grandmother can understand it. But I hear you that you're going to help the rural Black communities who really do need access. Right. I want to say thank you to each of you for pulling it together. I know y'all are doing multiple amazing things within your communities to ensure that Black and Brown, and of course, the larger population, specifically people of color, have access to this new world. I am excited about the infrastructure bill, and to Michelle's point, I am excited about the digital equity planning that has to happen in states because it's been so long that we have been without a map. And I'm not making fun of the FCC map. This is more of a metaphor here. We've been without a map that will guide us on how to really know where to help and how to help. And technically, those what those plans are. So, family, thank you for joining. To Reverend Jesse Jackson, again, and I think we all share the words that we are thankful for the amazing work that Push has done in the innovative economy for Black people in this country. And I know that we have a minute left, and I have the great privilege of being able to introduce one of our amazing FCC commissioners, Commissioner Geoffrey Starks, and he will bring remarks at this moment. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition and the Citizenship Education Fund for inviting me to speak at the 13th Annual Media and Telecommunications Symposium. It's an honor to be in community with you all again as we work to create and sustain a more equitable world. A lot has changed over the last 13 years because of the internet. The online world has become a place where people have the opportunity to learn, start a business, and as the folks here today know, it's also become a place Good afternoon. Thank you, Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition and the Citizenship Education Fund for inviting me to speak at the 13th Annual Media and Telecommunications Symposium. It's an honor to be in community with you all again as we work to create and sustain a more equitable world. A lot has changed over the last 13 years because of the internet. The online world has become a place where people have the opportunity to learn, start a business, and as the folks here today know, it's also become a place for social justice movements to flourish. And now I don't want to sound overly optimistic here because we also know that there's a lot of work to be done in online spaces, from disinformation to privacy. But for those who are connected, access to broadband provides a world of endless possibilities. However, for those who aren't connected, access to do everything from quickly paying those bills to securing an appointment for a COVID-19 vaccine are increasingly burdensome. And unfortunately, the data continues to reveal who it is who's on the wrong side of the digital divide. And it disproportionately includes people of color and low-income communities. In fact, the Pew Research Center has found that 29% of Black adults, 35% of Latinx adults, and 43% of adults with a household income of less than $30,000, they don't have that home broadband connection. And it's not just, of course, those in rural areas who lack access to broadband as well. In fact, 3 times as many households in urban areas remain unconnected as those rural areas. And so during the COVID-19 pandemic, the digital divide morphed into a monstrous COVID-19 divide. And it made clear what the late Congressman John Lewis said so many years ago. Access to the internet is a civil right. And while there are many disagreements in Washington, there is broad consensus that we must close the digital divide with investments in both infrastructure as well as ensuring broadband services are affordable. This consensus was evident when late last year Congress responded with a $3.2 billion emergency investment in broadband affordability, because for tens of millions of Americans, the price of broadband is just too high.